First time I was on council, I was very much there just as a local resident, as a community person, but I discovered that obviously the skills of being an architect and an urban designer, I just got more and more involved. And this time around I could really see that with Brad as potentially as mayor, that there could be quite a significant change in the way in which Fremantle was going to progress, and I kind of wanted to be a part of it. I always found him to be someone that was, you know, a leader, someone that actually did what I respected, which was not judge. He was very open to all ideas. He didn't have that sort of negativity that a lot of people in Fremantle had. You know, I've been through a lot previously, and I'd pretty much come to the conclusion that Fremantle was a very hard place to be a community leader. You're always going to be doing things which some people don't like. And people in Fremantle just need to sort of accept that there isn't one single solution. But as long as we're doing most of the things right in your eyes, you should sort of be comfortable with that. But sadly, unfortunately, I think a lot of people aren't like that in Freo. It's kind of like my way or the highway. When you then see that there are people like Brad who don't have that bone in their body, then you go, well, here's an opportunity to actually get the decision-making process back on a level keel, rather than this divisiveness that has always sort of hung over Fremantle. The Fremantle Union, it's a bit like a rock band that suddenly has overnight success. People go, oh wow, you know, that's great. That's, you know, look at them, they're fantastic. The Fremantle Union hopefully is a bit like that, in the sense that it actually has taken, you know, 4 years of very hard work to get to the point where we can actually say, oh look, we've got a Fremantle Union now and we're going to do all this great work. Because, you know, 4 years ago we were fighting the Port Authority, the community, the council. We're fighting the Port Authority over ING. We were fighting the state government. We were basically, you know, on different sides of the tracks, almost as enemies. I know certainly the first 2 years of Brad's leadership was spent unravelling, creating the communication, explaining with a fairly open-handed approach to say, we want to be a new council, we want to start afresh, we want to have the dialogue, we want to understand what their needs were, so that we could end up trying to come up with a solution that met all of our needs. And I think that approach hadn't been tried for a while. I mean, it sounds pretty obvious to do it that way, but everybody had been so busy arguing about what was wrong with everything that no one was conversing about what really needed to happen. So with the failure of ING, ultimately, it really was the opportunity to then say, right, well, okay, we're back at square one. What are we going to do about it? How do we do this better? And, you know, it's probably the single most important issue for Fremantle, is to get that right, to get that relationship between the city, the railway station and the harbour in a way that really complements each space individually and works for the city. It's never going to be an easy committee, in the sense that it's probably got more at stake in terms of what people hold dear in Fremantle, and so the input and the passions were always going to be intense and high, and they were. Now, some people towards the end felt, well, okay, we've done all that, but I still don't like the outcome, because I don't want anything to be higher than 5 stories. So, you know, we went through a fairly extensive process. I mean, people say, oh, we just sat there and talked about high-rise. I mean, that's just rubbish. We didn't just sit there and talk about how high can we make buildings. We sat there and went through and broke down into different criteria what would make good urban design, and then brought all that back together again and tried to stitch it together into a comprehensive strategy for that area, and that's what we've ended up with. One of the things that we really weren't able to resolve was on those 1 or 2 sites where we thought that buildings of a taller scale than about 7 stories might be acceptable. we genuinely couldn't decide what the criteria should be for how to assess those. We always came back to, well, a taller building might be okay, provided that it met X, Y and Z. And X, Y and Z would include, it needed to be very high design quality, almost exceptional. It needed to be something special. It needed to be not boxy and overpowering. It needed to almost be a landmark in an environment where a landmark was needed, where it was appropriate. So, there were always these criteria that were very hard to actually write down. So what we ended up saying is, well, we haven't concluded how to resolve that, but that we felt that it was very much something that was probably in the hands of the Design Advisory Committee, which had already been set up, that it was very much a set of performance criteria that would need to be established to decide whether or not a taller building might be acceptable in one or two locations. Now, because of that, it was left ambiguous. And because it was left ambiguous, it was then open to somebody to read that as meaning unlimited height. And as all it really actually meant was, well, it was work in progress, and we needed to work on that during the next phase of the process. Now, that was unfortunate, and it was kind of hijacked. The use of the terminology unlimited height was very emotive. Of course it was going to cause controversy. I mean, anyone that would suggest that a building of unlimited height could be built in Fremantle, it's got rocks in their head. If you're convinced in your mind that 5 stories, say, is the upper limit, and that even 7 stories set back is unacceptable, and I think probably 2 of the people that kicked up that fuss were of that mindset, then you're going to do anything and everything to try and get it back to that, to try and put the fear into the minds of many people, to get them behind your belief. I think there are some of us in Fremantle that actually want to be able to take enough courage from the fact that there are some very talented architects in Fremantle, some very talented decision makers in Fremantle, and that, if we can't trust to try and get something good, we'll probably never get anything other than mediocrity. And I think some of us are at a stage where we'd actually rather take the risk. What I'd love to see is more people come in and actually own the outcome. So I actually want to see dialogue. I actually want to see a conversation. What I don't want to see is just sort of, I've made up my mind and you're wrong and I'm right. I want to see people come in and actually understand the complexity of the problem, but also the complexity of how you can create the outcome. Because it's not a one-size-fits-all outcome. There are different ways of doing this. And the one we've come up with is to really focus on that part of the city, which is that missing link, that missing ring, and look at creating a whole new atmosphere in that area. The heritage, hopefully, of the future. It doesn't matter how expert you are in doing urban design and putting guidelines out for buildings, there is still going to be a degree of trepidation about what that road in front of you is going to dish up. And sometimes you do have to take that leap of faith. As long as we're moving forward, as long as we're building our way out of it, then I think people will really start to enjoy the changes that happen over the space of a few years. Because I think, when you're going somewhere, there's a sense of excitement. It's like going away on holidays. There's a sense of excitement, and so the fact that you're not there yet doesn't really matter.